The first thing you need to know about my wife Emma is that she collects friends like some people collect vintage wine, carefully, strategically, and always with an eye toward impressing other people. The second thing you need to know is that she's really, really good at it. Which is why, when she decided to destroy me in front of 37 of our closest acquaintances on a perfectly ordinary Saturday night in suburban Denver, she had a captive audience that would make a Broadway producer weep with envy. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. My name is Luke Morrison. I'm 29 years old, and until approximately 3 hours ago, I thought I had a pretty decent life. I work in digital marketing for a mid-sized tech company. I drive a Honda Civic that's paid off, and I live in a 3-bedroom ranch house with my wife of 4 years and her collection of succulents that she talks to like they're her children. Not glamorous, but comfortable, safe, predictable. I should have known predictable was about to go out the window when Emma spent 2 weeks planning what she called her spring social, a backyard barbecue that somehow evolved into a catered affair with string lights, a bartender, and color-coordinated napkins that cost more than my monthly car insurance. "Luke, honey, can you grab more ice from the garage?" Emma's voice carried that particular tone she used when she wanted something but was performing for an audience, sweet on the surface, with just enough edge underneath to let you know compliance wasn't optional. I was standing by the kitchen island, nursing a beer and watching our neighbor Janet demonstrate her new yoga pose to anyone unfortunate enough to make eye contact. The living room buzzed with the kind of forced conversation that happens when people who barely tolerate each other are trapped together with alcohol and social expectations. "Sure thing," I said, setting down my bottle. "Anything else while I'm playing host to my own party?" Emma's laugh tinkled like wind chimes in a hurricane. "Oh, you're so funny. Everyone, isn't Luke just hilarious?" A few people chuckled politely. I recognized the sound. It was the same laugh track that played whenever Emma made one of her observations about married life, or when her best friend Jessica made another comment about how lucky Emma was to have such an easy-going husband. Jessica Martinez now, though she'd gone back to her maiden name after the divorce, was holding court near the fireplace, regaling a small group with what I assumed was another story about her ex-husband's failings. Jess had been Emma's college roommate, and their friendship had survived Emma's marriage largely because Jess treated me like a piece of furniture that occasionally made amusing noises. I was halfway to the garage when I heard Emma's voice rise above the general chatter. "You know what my biggest problem is?" she announced, and I could tell by the slight slur in her words that she'd moved beyond her usual 2-glass limit. "I'm too nice. I let people take advantage of me." I paused, my hand on the garage door handle. Something in her tone made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. "Oh, honey, you're not too nice," said Brenda from down the street, the woman who'd once called the HOA on us for leaving our garbage cans out 15 minutes past the pickup deadline. "You're just generous with your time and energy." "Exactly!" Emma's voice got louder, more animated. "Like, take Luke, for example. He's sweet, don't get me wrong, really sweet. And cute in that, what do you call it, that harmless way." I felt my stomach drop. Through the small window in the garage door, I could see Emma gesturing toward the space where I'd been standing, even though I was no longer there. "But honestly," she continued, "sometimes I feel like I'm married to a really well-trained golden retriever. Like he's housebroken and he doesn't chew the furniture, but you wouldn't exactly call him useful." The laughter that followed wasn't polite anymore. It was the kind of laughter that happens when someone crosses a line and everyone else is relieved they're not the target. I stood frozen in the doorway, ice forgotten, listening to my wife eviscerate me for the entertainment of people who would be gossiping about this conversation for months. "Emma, you're terrible." Jessica's voice carried clearly through the open patio doors. "But honestly, I get it. After my divorce, I swore I'd never settle for a man who couldn't change his own oil again. Right? Emma was really warming up now. Like, Luke's idea of fixing something is calling someone else to fix it. His idea of romance is remembering to put the toilet seat down. His idea of ambition is getting promoted to senior marketing coordinator someday. Maybe, if he's really lucky. My face burned. The senior marketing coordinator thing was a conversation we'd had in private about my 5-year career goals. I'd told her I didn't need to be a CEO, that I was happy building something steady and sustainable. She'd said she admired my contentment, that it was refreshing to be with someone who wasn't constantly chasing the next big thing. Apparently, that was before she'd had 3 glasses of wine and a captive audience. So what are you going to do about it? This from Mark, our neighbor, who worked in real estate and drove a BMW he couldn't afford. I don't know, Emma said, and I could hear the shrug in her voice. I mean, what can you do? Divorce him because he's boring? That seems harsh. You could always trade him in for a newer model, Jessica suggested, and the laughter that followed was definitely not polite anymore. God, could you imagine? Emma giggled. Like, just put him on Craigslist? Husband for sale, low mileage, easy maintenance, comes with his own Netflix account, and a really extensive collection of vintage band t-shirts. Don't forget to mention he's house-trained, Mark added, and I could hear the smirk in his voice. Oh, definitely house-trained, Emma agreed. Sits, stays, comes when called. Doesn't bark at the neighbors or dig up the yard. Really, he's the perfect starter husband for someone who wants to practice being married without any of the actual challenges. I realized I was gripping the door handle so tightly, my knuckles had gone white. Part of me wanted to storm back in there and defend myself, to point out that I'd been the one working extra hours to pay for this house, this party, the car Emma drove, and the credit cards she maxed out on home decor. Part of me wanted to grab the microphone from the DJ she'd insisted we hire and give everyone a detailed breakdown of exactly how useful I'd been during 4 years of marriage. But mostly, I just felt tired. You know what? Emma's voice had taken on that dangerous, reckless quality that alcohol sometimes gave her. I have an idea. Who here wants to take my husband? Seriously. I'll make you a deal. He's cute. He's undemanding, and he'll never ever challenge you or surprise you or do anything that might disrupt your perfectly planned suburban existence. The backyard had gone quiet. I could picture everyone looking around at each other, trying to figure out if this was still a joke or if they were witnessing an actual marriage imploding in real time. I'll take him, Jessica said, and her voice was just loud enough for everyone to hear. I mean, after Brad, a boring husband sounds pretty appealing. Sold, Emma announced, and I heard the sound of glasses clinking. Jessica, congratulations. You just adopted yourself a husband. I'll have his bags packed by morning. That's when I walked back into the party. The conversations didn't stop immediately. It took a few seconds for people to notice I was there, standing in the doorway with empty hands, and what I imagined was a pretty spectacular expression on my face. Emma saw me first. Her smile faltered for just a moment, but then she rallied, because Emma always rallied. Luke, there you are. We were just talking about you. I heard, I said, and my voice came out steadier than I'd expected. Sounds like congratulations are in order. Jessica, I guess you're my new wife now. Jessica had the grace to look embarrassed, but Emma just laughed. Oh, come on, Luke. Don't be so sensitive. We're just having fun. Right, I said. Fun. Well, in that case, I have some good news for you, Emma. I already packed my bags. The backyard went silent. Even the DJ seemed to sense something was wrong and let the current song fade out without starting a new one. Emma's smile became fixed, artificial. What do you mean? I looked around at all these people, our neighbors, her co-workers, her college friends, the random acquaintances she'd collected over the years, and I realized I didn't actually like any of them. More importantly, I realized they didn't like me either. I was just the harmless accessory who came with Emma, like a purse dog or a really boring piece of jewelry. I mean, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear, that you're absolutely right. You deserve better than a house-trained husband who doesn't know how to change his own oil. And I deserve better than a wife who thinks humiliating me in front of 37 people counts as entertainment. Emma's face went pale under her carefully applied makeup. Luke, you're being ridiculous. It was just a joke. I know, I said. That's the problem. I turned to leave, then paused and looked back at Jessica. By the way, Jess, you might want to think twice about that adoption. I snore, I leave dishes in the sink, and I have strong opinions about which way the toilet paper should hang. Also, I'm pretty sure Emma forgot to mention that I'm not actually available, since we're still married and all. Luke, wait. Emma started after me, but I was already walking through the house toward the front door. Don't worry, I called back without turning around. I'll send you my new address once I figure out where I'm going. You can forward my mail. I made it to my car before Emma caught up with me, her high heels clicking frantically on the driveway. Luke, stop. Please, I'm sorry, okay? I had too much to drink and I was just, I don't know, showing off or something. You know I didn't mean any of that. I paused with my hand on the car door. The thing is, Emma, I think you did mean it. I think you meant every word. That's not true. When's the last time you introduced me as your husband instead of, this is Luke? When's the last time you asked me what I thought about something that mattered to you? When's the last time you talked to me the way you talked to Jessica, or Brenda, or literally anyone else in your life? She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Right, I said. That's what I thought. I got in the car and started the engine. Emma stood in the driveway, her arms wrapped around herself, looking smaller and more fragile than I'd seen her in years. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Then I remembered the laughter, the casual cruelty in her voice when she'd offered to sell me like a used appliance, and the feeling passed. I was backing out of the driveway when my phone buzzed with a text message. Without thinking, I glanced at the screen. The message wasn't for me. It was for Emma, but her phone was still connected to my car's Bluetooth from earlier in the day. Tonight, after he's gone, it read. The sender was listed as Max Jim. I sat there for a long moment, engine running, staring at the message. Max owned the CrossFit gym where Emma had started working out 6 months ago. She'd mentioned him a few times, how encouraging he was, how he really understood her fitness goals, how he made her feel strong and capable, how he made her feel useful, I thought. I looked back at the house, where the party was still going on. Through the windows, I could see people clustered in small groups, probably dissecting what had just happened with the kind of gleeful analysis that would fuel neighborhood gossip for months. Emma was still standing in the driveway, watching me. I put the car in drive and pulled away, leaving my wife, my house, and my perfectly predictable suburban life behind. But as I drove toward my best friend Brian's apartment, where I knew I could crash for the night, I couldn't stop thinking about that text message. Tonight, after he's gone. Well, I was gone now. The question was, what exactly was going to happen tonight? Brian Kowalski lived in a converted warehouse downtown that he'd been slowly renovating for the past 3 years. It was the kind of place that looked like a disaster from the outside but was surprisingly comfortable once you got past the industrial aesthetic and the fact that his nearest neighbor was a 24-hour laundromat. He answered the door in pajama pants and a t-shirt that read, "I'm not arguing, I'm just explaining why I'm right," took one look at my face, and stepped aside without a word. "Beer?" he asked, padding toward the kitchen. "Several," I said, dropping onto his couch, which was actually just a mattress with a lot of pillows that he'd somehow made look intentional. Brian and I had been friends since college, where we'd bonded over our shared love of obscure horror movies and our complete inability to understand women. He worked as a freelance web developer, which meant he kept weird hours and had an impressive collection of energy drinks and a suspicious amount of knowledge about internet privacy. He handed me a beer and settled into the chair across from me. "So," he said, "want to talk about it? Or should I just assume Emma finally snapped and you're here because you need help hiding a body?" "No bodies," I said. "Yet." I told him about the party, about Emma's performance, about the text message. Brian listened without interrupting, which was one of the things I'd always appreciated about him. He didn't try to fix things or offer advice until you asked for it. "Max from the gym," he said when I finished. "Tall guy. Looks like he eats protein powder for breakfast." "You know him?" "I know of him. My ex-girlfriend Sarah used to work out there before we broke up. Said he was a little too friendly with the married women, if you know what I mean." I took a long pull from my beer. "How friendly?" "The kind of friendly that involves a lot of personal training sessions and motivational text messages at weird hours." Brian studied my face. "How long has Emma been going there?" 6 months, maybe 7. I thought about it. "She started right after New Year's, said she wanted to get in shape, feel better about herself." "And when did she start treating you like a domesticated pet?" That was a harder question to answer. The change had been gradual, so subtle I hadn't really noticed it until tonight. Emma had always been social, always been the one who made plans and organized our lives. But somewhere along the way, she'd stopped including me in those plans, except as a supporting character. "I don't know," I admitted. "It's been building for a while, I guess. I just thought she was going through something. Work stress, maybe, or just, I don't know, married life stuff." "Married life stuff doesn't usually involve publicly humiliating your spouse and then setting up booty calls with your personal trainer," Brian pointed out. My phone buzzed. Emma, calling for the 4th time since I'd left the house. I declined the call and turned the phone face down on the coffee table. "You going to talk to her?" Brian asked. "Eventually, but not tonight. Tonight I want to figure out exactly what I'm dealing with." Brian raised an eyebrow. "Meaning?" "Meaning that text message wasn't sent by accident. And if Emma's been planning whatever this is, then I want to know how long it's been going on and how deep it goes." "Luke," Brian said carefully, "what are you thinking of doing?" I wasn't entirely sure yet, but I knew I was tired of being the harmless, predictable husband who didn't ask uncomfortable questions or make waves. I was tired of being useful only as a source of income and comic relief. "I'm thinking," I said, "that if Emma wants to treat me like I'm invisible, maybe it's time to use that to my advantage." Brian grinned. "Now you're talking. What do you need?" We spent the next hour planning what Brian called Operation Reality Check. The plan was simple: figure out exactly what Emma and Max had been up to, gather evidence, and then decide what to do with it. Brian's technical skills came in handy. Emma and I shared a phone plan, which meant he could access our account and see call logs, text message timestamps, and data usage patterns. It wasn't exactly legal, but it wasn't exactly illegal either, since my name was on the account. What we found was enlightening. Emma had been texting Max almost daily for the past 4 months. The messages started innocent enough: questions about workout routines, scheduling training sessions. But the timestamps told a different story. Messages at 11 p.m., 6 a.m., during work hours when she should have been writing. "Look at this," Brian said, pointing at the screen. "She's been going to the gym at weird times, like really weird times. Who works out at 10 p.m. on a Tuesday?" "Someone who doesn't want to run into other people," I said. The data usage was interesting too. Emma's phone had been burning through data at locations that weren't our house, her office, or the gym. Hotels, mostly. Cheap ones on the outskirts of town. "This is circumstantial," Brian pointed out. "Suspicious as hell, but circumstantial." "I know. That's why we need more." My phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Emma. "Luke, please come home. We need to talk. I'm sorry about tonight. It wasn't what it looked like." I showed the message to Brian. What do you think? I think she's panicking. Question is, why? If it was just the party thing, she'd probably wait until tomorrow to apologize. The fact that she's blowing up your phone suggests something else is going on. As if on cue, my phone buzzed again. Another text from Emma. Max came by to check on me after everyone left. He said he saw you drive away and wanted to make sure I was okay. He's such a good friend. Brian and I looked at each other. She's establishing an alibi, I said. For what? I don't know yet, but people don't establish alibis unless they think they need them. We decided to take a drive. Brian's car was a beat-up Honda that looked like every other beat-up Honda in the city, which made it perfect for what we had in mind. Emma's car was still in our driveway when we drove past the house, but the party was clearly over. The caterers were packing up and most of the cars were gone. Max's gym was about 15 minutes away in a strip mall between a nail salon and a store that sold nothing but different kinds of hot sauce. His truck, a massive black Ford F-150 with custom rims and a sound system you could probably hear from space, was parked in front. So he's at the gym, Brian said. That doesn't prove anything. No, but it's interesting timing. Emma says he came by to check on her, but he's here. We parked across the street and waited. The gym officially closed at 10 p.m., but the lights were still on and we could see movement inside. At 10:47, Max came out of the gym with a woman I didn't recognize. She was blonde, athletic, probably in her early 30s. They stood by his truck talking for a few minutes, and then she got into a small red car and drove away. Huh, Brian said. Plot twist. Max locked up the gym and got in his truck, but instead of driving toward our neighborhood, he headed in the opposite direction. We followed him. He drove to a 24-hour diner on the other side of town, parked, and went inside. Through the windows, we could see him take a booth in the back and order coffee. This is weird, I said. If he's meeting Emma, why here? Why not just go to the house? Maybe he's not meeting Emma, Brian suggested. We were about to find out. At 11:23, Jessica Martinez walked into the diner. Well, shit, Brian said. Jessica slid into the booth across from Max, and they immediately leaned in close, talking intently. From our position in the parking lot, we couldn't hear what they were saying, but their body language suggested it wasn't a casual conversation. How long do you think this has been going on? I asked. The question is, what exactly is this? Brian pulled out his phone and started taking pictures through the diner window. Is Max cheating on Emma with Jessica? Is Jessica in on whatever Emma and Max have been planning? Are they all in it together? I thought about the party, about how quickly Jessica had volunteered to take me when Emma made her offer, about how she'd been encouraging Emma's complaints about our marriage, egging her on. They're all in it together, I said. I don't know what they're planning, but Jessica's involved. We sat there for another 20 minutes, watching Max and Jessica talk. Finally, they stood up, and Jessica handed Max something, an envelope maybe, or a small package. They didn't hug goodbye or kiss or do anything that suggested a romantic relationship. It looked more like a business transaction. We should go, Brian said as they headed for the door, before they see us. We made it back to Brian's apartment by 12:30. I was exhausted, but my mind was racing. Emma, Max, and Jessica were planning something that involved me leaving the house. The question was what, and how long they'd been planning it. You know what I think? Brian said as we settled back into his living room. I think they want you gone. Permanently, he added quickly. But gone. Out of the picture. Why? Think about it. You said Emma's been treating you like you're invisible, right? Like you're just this inconvenient obstacle to the life she really wants. What if she's decided to do something about that? I thought about the house, which was in both our names, about our joint bank accounts, our shared credit cards, the life insurance policy Emma had insisted we get when we got married. She can't just kick me out, I said. It's my house, too. She can if she can make a case that you abandoned her, or if she can make you want to leave. My phone buzzed with another text from Emma. Luke, I'm really worried. Please just let me know you're safe. We can work this out. I showed it to Brian. What do you think? I think she's covering her bases. If something goes wrong with whatever they're planning, she wants to be able to say she was the concerned wife who tried to reach out to her troubled husband. Troubled? Think about it from her perspective. You just had a public breakdown at a party, stormed out of your own house, and now you're not answering your phone. If she spins it right, you're the unstable one. You're the one who couldn't handle a little harmless teasing. You're the one who abandoned your marriage over a joke. I stared at my phone, at Emma's carefully crafted messages of concern and apology. Brian was right. She was building a narrative, creating a version of events that would make her look like the victim and me look like the problem. The thing was, I'd been letting her do it for months. Every time she made a comment about my job, my ambitions, my usefulness, I'd just smiled and let it slide. Every time she treated me like an accessory instead of a partner, I'd told myself it was just her personality, that she didn't mean anything by it. But she did mean it. And now she was planning to do something about it. Brian, I said, I need you to help me figure out what they're planning. All of it. Every detail. And then what? And then I'm going to show Emma exactly how useful a boring, predictable husband can be when he puts his mind to it. Brian grinned. Now we're talking. But Luke, whatever we do it smart. We do it legal. And we make sure that when the dust settles, you're the one left standing. Agreed. But Brian, yeah, I want them to know it was me. When it's over, when their perfect little plan falls apart, I want them to know exactly who beat them at their own game. Outside, it started to rain. I listened to the water hitting Brian's windows and thought about Emma, probably lying awake in our bed, wondering where I was and whether her carefully laid plans were about to fall apart. She was right to wonder. I woke up on Brian's couch with a crick in my neck and a sense of clarity I hadn't felt in months. While I'd been playing the role of the harmless, accommodating husband, Emma had been systematically dismantling our marriage and planning my exit. Now it was my turn to make some plans. Brian was already awake, sitting at his computer with a cup of coffee and what looked like a detailed spreadsheet. "Morning, sunshine," he said without looking up. "I've been busy." He'd been more than busy. He'd been thorough. The spreadsheet contained a timeline of Emma's activities over the past 6 months, cross-referenced with Max's gym schedule, Jessica's divorce proceedings, and a dozen other data points that painted a very clear picture. "Look at this," Brian said, pointing to a cluster of dates in February. Emma starts going to Max's gym. Jessica files for divorce. Emma opens a separate checking account. I found the paperwork in your shared email. She used your address, but her name only. She opened an account without telling me? Gets better. Look at March. He scrolled down. Emma starts working late, but her computer activity shows she's not actually working. She's researching divorce lawyers, property division, spousal support. She's also been looking at apartments. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Apartments? 1-bedroom places downtown. She's been saving listings, checking availability. And here's the kicker. She's been using your shared computer to do it, but deleting the browser history. Lucky for us, deleting browser history doesn't actually delete anything if you know where to look. The picture was becoming clearer, and I didn't like what I was seeing. Emma hadn't just been cheating on me with Max. She'd been planning to leave me, and she'd been doing it methodically, carefully, like a project she was managing. "There's more," Brian said. "Jessica's been helping. Look at these email exchanges." He pulled up a series of emails between Emma and Jessica, recovered from Emma's automatically synced account. They made for interesting reading. "Luke's so clueless," one message read. I could probably pack half the house and he wouldn't notice until he went looking for his PlayStation. Just make sure you get everything documented, Jessica had replied. Brad tried to claim I was hiding assets, but I had every transaction recorded. The key is making it look like he's the one being unreasonable. I still think the public thing is risky, Emma had written. What if he doesn't react the way we want? Trust me, Jessica had replied. Men like Luke have fragile egos. Push him hard enough in front of people and he'll either explode or run away. Either reaction makes him look bad and you look like the victim. I stared at the screen. They planned the whole thing. The party, the humiliation, everything. It looks like it. The goal was to provoke you into doing something that would make you look like the bad guy. Storming out was probably the best-case scenario from their perspective. Now Emma can tell everyone that you abandoned her over a harmless joke. My phone had been buzzing all morning with messages from Emma, each one more concerned and apologetic than the last. Now I understood why. She needed me to come crawling back, apologetic and ashamed, so she could play the role of the forgiving wife who was trying to save her marriage from her unstable husband. What about Max? I asked. That's where it gets interesting. Max isn't just Emma's affair partner. He's Jessica's business partner. Brian pulled up another set of documents. Jessica's been planning to open a fitness studio. Yoga, Pilates, that kind of thing. Max is providing the startup capital and the fitness expertise. Emma's been helping with the marketing and business planning. So this isn't just about Emma leaving me. It's about all three of them starting a business together. Exactly. And your house, which Emma would get half of in a divorce, is probably going to provide a nice chunk of the funding. I sat back, trying to process it all. For months, while I'd been working extra hours and trying to be a good husband, Emma had been systematically planning to destroy our marriage, take half our assets, and start a new life with her affair partner and her best friend. You know what the really messed up part is? I said. If she'd just asked for a divorce, I probably would have been reasonable about it. We could have split things fairly, stayed friends, moved on with our lives. But that wouldn't have given her the victim narrative, Brian pointed out. This way, she gets to be the wronged wife, whose husband couldn't handle her success and independence. She gets sympathy, she gets the money, and she gets to start fresh, without any guilt. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Jessica. Luke, Emma's really worried about you. She's been crying all morning. Whatever happened last night, she's sorry. Don't throw away your marriage over pride. I showed the message to Brian. Jessica's playing mediator now. Of course she is. She needs Emma to stay married to you long enough for their business plan to work. If Emma files for divorce now, before you've done anything that makes you look bad, she might not get as favorable a settlement. So what's the end game? They keep pushing until I do something stupid. Then Emma divorces me and claims I was abusive or unstable. That's my guess, and honestly, it's not a bad plan. If you hadn't seen that text message last night, if you hadn't gotten suspicious, you probably would have gone home this morning, apologized for overreacting, and walked right into whatever trap they're setting. I thought about that alternative timeline, the one where I played my assigned role as the clueless, predictable husband. Emma would have forgiven me, magnanimously. She would have suggested marriage counseling maybe, or a trial separation to work on ourselves. She would have moved out temporarily, taking half our stuff and most of our friends, and I would have been left wondering how my perfectly ordinary life had fallen apart so quickly. Well, I said, good thing I'm not that predictable after all. Brian grinned. So what's the plan? I'd been thinking about that all morning. Emma and Jessica had made one crucial mistake. They'd underestimated me. They'd assumed I was too passive, too accommodating, too boring to fight back effectively. They were about to learn otherwise. First, I said, we gather more evidence, everything we can find about their business plan, their timeline, their strategy. I want to know exactly what they're planning before they do it. And then? Then we give them exactly what they want. Sort of. The first phase of what Brian started calling Operation Turnabout began that afternoon. I went home. Emma was waiting for me, perfectly dressed and made up despite her claims of crying all morning. She rushed to meet me at the door, throwing her arms around me in what looked like relief but felt like performance. "Oh, thank God," she said. "I was so worried. I was afraid you might do something stupid." "Like what?" I asked, gently extracting myself from her embrace. "I don't know. Drive off somewhere, get hurt, do something rash. You seemed so upset last night." "I was upset," I agreed. "But I'm fine now. I just needed some space to think." Emma's smile was radiant. "I'm so glad you're being reasonable about this. I know last night was... well, it was a mistake. I had too much to drink, and I said things I didn't mean. You know how I get at parties sometimes." "I do know," I said. "That's why I'm not going to make a big deal about it." Relief flooded her face. "Really? Really? You're right, it was just a party, just a joke, no reason to let it ruin our marriage." Emma hugged me again, and this time it felt more genuine. "I love you, Luke. You know that, right? Even when I'm being stupid and saying things I don't mean." "I know," I said, and kissed the top of her head. "I love you too." It wasn't entirely a lie. I did love Emma, or at least I loved the woman I'd thought she was. The woman who was systematically planning to destroy me was a stranger, but she was wearing my wife's face, and that made this whole thing infinitely more complicated. Over the next few days, I played the role of the reconciling husband perfectly. I apologized for overreacting at the party. I brought Emma flowers. I suggested we plan a weekend getaway to reconnect. I was attentive, affectionate, and completely predictable. Meanwhile, Brian and I continued our investigation. We discovered that Emma had already put down a deposit on an apartment downtown, the same building where Jessica was looking. The lease was set to begin on the 1st of next month, just 3 weeks away. We found emails between Emma and a divorce attorney discussing strategy for high-conflict separations and protecting assets from vindictive spouses. Most damning of all, we found the business plan for Zenith Wellness Studio, complete with financial projections, marketing strategies, and a detailed timeline that had Emma leaving me in 2 weeks, filing for divorce a week later, and opening the studio 6 months after that. "They've got it all figured out," Brian said, scrolling through the documents. "Emma plays the victim, gets a favorable divorce settlement, and invests the money in the business. Jessica provides the yoga expertise, Max provides the fitness component and startup capital. It's actually pretty smart." "Except for one thing," I said. "What's that?" "They forgot to account for what happens if the boring, predictable husband turns out to be smarter than they thought." The second phase of Operation Turnabout began with Max's gym. Brian and I had been watching the place for a week, documenting who came and went, when Max was there, when he wasn't. We'd learned that Max had a routine. He opened the gym at 6 a.m., taught classes until noon, took a long lunch break, then came back for evening sessions until 10 p.m. What he didn't know was that his gym's security system was about as sophisticated as a screen door. Brian had identified at least 6 ways to access the building without triggering any alarms, and the computer system that controlled the music, lighting, and promotional displays was connected to an unsecured wireless network. "This is almost too easy," Brian said as we sat in his car outside the gym at 5:30 a.m. "It's like he wants to be hacked." The plan was simple. Max's gym hosted a monthly community fitness challenge that drew crowds of local fitness enthusiasts, including several people who'd been at Emma's party. Today was challenge day, which meant the gym would be packed with potential witnesses. At exactly 6:15 a.m., just as Max was welcoming the first wave of participants, every screen in the gym lit up with a slideshow that Brian had prepared. The slideshow was titled Max's Personal Training, a Comprehensive Review, and featured screenshots of text messages between Max and various married women, including Emma. The messages weren't explicit enough to be illegal, but they were definitely inappropriate. Lots of late-night motivation, comments about private sessions, and suggestions for one-on-one training at unusual hours. The crown jewel was a series of photos that Brian had taken at the diner, showing Max meeting with Jessica at midnight, along with a caption that read, "When your trainer has secret midnight meetings with your best friend, maybe it's time to find a new gym." The slideshow ran for exactly 3 minutes before Max managed to shut it down, but that was long enough. People were already pulling out their phones, taking pictures of the screens, posting to social media. By the time we drove away, Max's personal training was starting to trend on local social media, and Max was standing in his gym trying to explain to a room full of very uncomfortable married couples why his text messages looked so much like those of a predator. "Phase 1 complete," Brian said, grinning. "How do you feel?" "Good," I said, and I meant it. Really good. But we were just getting started. Emma came home that evening in a state of barely controlled panic. "Did you hear what happened at Max's gym?" she asked, trying to sound casual as she poured herself a very large glass of wine. "No. What happened?" I was sitting at the kitchen table working on my laptop, playing the role of the oblivious husband. "Someone hacked into his computer system and put up all these inappropriate messages between him and his clients. It's all over Facebook." "That's terrible," I said, not looking up from my screen. "Was it like personal information? Credit card numbers?" "No, it was—" Emma paused, clearly trying to figure out how much to tell me. "It was text messages, private conversations between him and some of the women he trains." "Yikes, that's a pretty serious breach of privacy. I hope none of his clients were hurt by it." Emma stared at me for a long moment, as if trying to determine whether I was being genuine or sarcastic. "Some of the messages were taken out of context. People are saying he was inappropriate with married women." "Was he?" "Of course not." The response came too quickly, too defensively. "Max is a professional. He's very supportive of his clients. He encourages them to push their limits, to believe in themselves. Some people might misinterpret that as something else." I said, finally looking up. "Well, I'm sure it'll blow over. These social media things usually do." But it didn't blow over. If anything, it got worse. By the next morning, 3 women had posted detailed accounts on Facebook about Max's inappropriate behavior. None of them accused him of anything criminal, but the pattern was clear. Late-night texts, suggestions for private sessions, comments about their marriages and how they deserved better. The gym's Yelp page was flooded with 1-star reviews. The local fitness Facebook groups were buzzing with warnings about predatory trainers. Someone had created a parody Instagram account called Max's Midnight Motivation that posted screenshots of his most inappropriate messages alongside stock photos of concerned-looking housewives. Emma spent the day glued to her phone, frantically texting. I assumed she was in damage control mode, trying to coordinate with Max and Jessica about how to handle the fallout. That evening, she announced that she was going to skip her workout for the rest of the week. "Just until this whole thing dies down," she said. "I don't want people to think I'm involved in whatever this is." "That's probably smart," I agreed. "No point in getting caught up in drama." What Emma didn't know was that Brian and I were just getting started. Phase 2 targeted Jessica. Jessica worked as a freelance social media manager for several local businesses. Her whole professional reputation was built on her ability to navigate online drama and maintain positive brand images. She prided herself on being the person who could spin any situation, turn any negative press into a positive opportunity. She was about to find out how it felt to be on the other side of a social media campaign. Brian had done his research. Jessica's business operated under the name J-Mart Social Solutions, and her client list included a high-end restaurant, 2 boutique clothing stores, and a yoga studio that was apparently going to be Zenith Wellness's main competition. "She's been bad-mouthing the competition on behalf of her current client," Brian explained. showing me screenshots of fake Yelp reviews and negative comments that could be traced back to Jessica's various fake accounts. It's not illegal, but it's definitely unethical. Her current client probably doesn't even know she's doing it. And you can prove it's her? Digital fingerprints don't lie. She's been sloppy about covering her tracks. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Brian created a comprehensive report documenting Jessica's fake review campaigns, complete with screenshots, IP addresses, and timestamps. Then he sent copies to Jessica's current clients, her target businesses, and the local Better Business Bureau. The subject line read, "Unethical Business Practices, J-Mart Social Solutions." But that wasn't the best part. The best part was the anonymous tip Brian sent to the yoga studio Jessica had been sabotaging on behalf of her client. The tip included not only evidence of Jessica's fake review campaign, but also screenshots of her emails with Emma discussing their plans for Zenith Wellness. "Competition is good for business," the anonymous tip read, "but maybe you should know that the person who's been trashing your studio online is planning to open a competing business 6 blocks away." The response was swift and devastating. Jessica's current clients dropped her within 48 hours. The yoga studio she'd been targeting filed a complaint with the Better Business Bureau and threatened legal action. The local business community, which was small and gossipy, started buzzing about that social media woman who creates fake reviews. But the real masterpiece was what happened next. The yoga studio Jessica had been sabotaging decided to fight back. They hired their own social media specialist, a legitimate one, who launched a campaign called Support Honest Business. The campaign encouraged people to be wary of fake reviews and to support businesses that competed fairly. As part of the campaign, they published a case study about unethical marketing practices, using Jessica's fake review scheme as an example. They didn't use her name, but they included enough details that anyone in the local business community could figure out who they were talking about. Within a week, Jessica's professional reputation was in ruins. Her website started displaying a temporarily unavailable message. Her social media accounts went quiet, and Emma was starting to panic. "Jess is having some problems with her business," she told me over dinner, picking at her food nervously. "Oh no, what kind of problems?" "Someone's been spreading rumors about her, saying she creates fake reviews for clients. It's completely untrue, of course, but you know how these things snowball." "That's awful," I said. "Is there anything we can do to help?" Emma looked at me sharply. "Like what?" "I don't know. Maybe I could write a positive review for her business, or recommend her to someone at my company?" "No!" The response was immediate and panicked. "I mean, that's sweet of you to offer, but I think it's better if we just stay out of it. Let her handle it herself." "If you say so, but if she needs anything, just let me know." Emma nodded, but I could see the wheels turning in her head. Her carefully laid plans were starting to fall apart, and she was trying to figure out how to salvage them. That's when I decided it was time for Phase 3. Emma had been planning to leave me in less than 2 weeks. According to the timeline Brian had found, she was supposed to pick a fight with me this weekend, storm out dramatically, and move into her downtown apartment while I was left wondering what had gone wrong. Instead, I was going to beat her to it. On Friday morning, I packed a suitcase and left it in my car. Then I went to work as usual, but instead of coming home at my normal time, I drove to a hotel across town and checked in for the weekend. At 7 p.m., I sent Emma a text. "Need some time to think. Going away for the weekend. We'll talk when I get back." Then I turned off my phone and waited. Brian met me at the hotel bar an hour later. "Phase 3 is a go," he reported. "Emma's been calling and texting non-stop. She's also been calling me, your office, your parents, trying to figure out where you are." "Good. Let her panic. There's more. She called Max, and he went over to the house. They're there now, along with Jessica." "Perfect. Are you recording?" Brian held up his phone, which was connected to the security cameras I'd had installed in our house 6 months earlier. Emma thought they were just for security, but they also recorded audio, and the recordings were automatically uploaded to a cloud server that only I had access to. We spent the evening watching Emma, Max, and Jessica pace around my living room, trying to figure out what had gone wrong with their plan. The audio quality was excellent. "He's never done anything like this before," Emma was saying. "Luke doesn't just disappear. He doesn't make dramatic gestures." "Maybe he found out something," Jessica suggested. "About the business or about you and Max." "How could he find out? We've been careful." "Have we?" Max's voice was tense. "Because first my gym gets hacked, then Jessica's business implodes, and now Luke suddenly decides to take a mysterious weekend trip? That's a lot of coincidences." "You think he's behind this?" Emma sounded incredulous. "I think we might have underestimated your husband," Max replied. They talked for another hour, going over their plans, trying to figure out what to do next. They considered moving up their timeline, having Emma file for divorce immediately. They discussed whether they should cancel the business plan entirely. They even talked about confronting me directly, demanding to know what I knew. But in the end, they decided to wait. They would stick to the original plan, more or less. Emma would pick a fight with me when I got back, but instead of storming out herself, she would try to provoke me into leaving again. If I was already showing signs of instability, one more push might be enough to make me look like the bad guy. "It's risky," Jessica said. "If he really is onto us—" "He's not," Emma insisted. "Luke's not that smart. He's just, I don't know, having some kind of midlife crisis or something. We stick to the plan." I looked at Brian. "Famous last words." "So what's the next move?" "Now we give them exactly what they want." Sort of. I came home Sunday evening to find Emma waiting for me with what she probably thought was the perfect combination of concern and wounded dignity. "Where were you?" she asked, before I'd even closed the front door. "I was worried sick. You can't just disappear like that without telling me where you're going." "I told you I needed time to think," I said, setting down my suitcase. "I went to a hotel. I ordered room service, watched bad movies, and thought about our marriage." "And what did you conclude?" I looked at my wife, really looked at her. She was still beautiful, still charming, still capable of making me feel like the luckiest man in the world when she wanted to. But now I could see the calculation behind her expressions, the careful management of every word and gesture. "I concluded," I said, "that we need to talk. Really talk, about what we want from this marriage, from each other, from our lives." Relief flickered across Emma's face. This was the conversation she'd been planning to have, the one that would end with me being the unreasonable one, the one who couldn't handle her growth and independence. "Okay," she said, "let's talk." We sat down in the living room, and Emma launched into what was clearly a prepared speech about how she'd been feeling unfulfilled lately, how she needed more independence, more space to grow as a person. She talked about her dreams and ambitions, about how she felt like our marriage had become stagnant. It was a good speech. If I hadn't known what she was really planning, I might have been convinced that this was just a wife trying to communicate her needs to her husband. "I think," she concluded, "that maybe we should consider a trial separation, just temporarily, while we both figure out what we really want." "A separation," I repeated. "Just a trial one. I could move out for a few months, we could do some individual therapy, see how we feel. It doesn't have to mean divorce. It could actually strengthen our marriage in the long run." "And where would you go?" "I've been looking at some apartments downtown. Nothing permanent, just a short-term lease while we work things out." I nodded thoughtfully. "That's a big step, Emma. Are you sure that's what you want?" "I think it might be what we both need," she said. "Some space, some perspective, a chance to remember why we fell in love in the first place." "And what about Max?" The question hung in the air like a loaded gun. Emma's face went very still. "What about Max?" "Well, you've been spending a lot of time at his gym. I just wondered if your friendship with him was part of what made you realize you needed more independence. Max is just a friend, Emma said carefully. A trainer. He's helped me get in shape, build confidence, but that's all. I'm sure that's all it is, I agreed. But people talk, you know? Especially after that whole thing with the hacked computers and the inappropriate messages. I wouldn't want anyone to get the wrong idea about you and him. Emma's smile was brittle. People always talk, Luke. That doesn't mean we should let gossip run our lives. Of course not. But maybe, if we're going to do this separation thing, it would be better if you found a different gym, just to avoid any appearance of impropriety. I don't think that's necessary. Maybe not, but I'd feel better about it. If we're trying to save our marriage, we should probably avoid anything that might cause more problems. Emma agreed reluctantly, and we spent the next hour working out the details of our trial separation. She would move out at the end of the week. We would split the household expenses. We would see a marriage counselor. We would take things slow and see how we felt in a few months. It was all very civilized and mature. Emma seemed pleased with how reasonable I was being. What she didn't know was that Brian had been busy while I was playing the role of the confused, accommodating husband. Brian had spent the weekend creating what he called the nuclear option, a comprehensive website that documented everything we'd discovered about Emma, Max, and Jessica's plans. The site included copies of their emails, screenshots of their text messages, photos from their secret meetings, financial records showing Emma's hidden apartment lease and secret bank account, and a detailed timeline of their scheme. The site was professionally designed and meticulously documented. Every claim was backed up with evidence. Every screenshot was authenticated. It looked like the work of a private investigator, not a bitter husband. But the best part was the domain name, emmaandmaxandjessica.com. It's already indexed by Google, Brian told me over the phone. Anyone who searches for any of their names is going to find it. And you're sure it's all legal? Everything on that site is either public record or information you had legitimate access to as Emma's husband. The text messages came from your shared phone plan. The emails came from accounts she accessed on your shared computer. The financial records are from accounts with your name on them. It's all completely legal. What about Max and Jessica? Max's information came from public social media posts and business records. Jessica's came from her own professional websites and public business filings. Again, all legal. The site went live on Tuesday morning, just as Emma was supposed to be moving into her downtown apartment. I was at work when my phone started buzzing with calls and messages. Emma, Max, Jessica, even people I barely knew who'd somehow heard about the website. I ignored them all and focused on my job, playing the role of the clueless husband who had no idea why everyone was suddenly so interested in talking to him. The first call I answered was from Emma's mother. "Luke, honey, I just saw the most disturbing website. Please tell me this isn't true." "What website, Mrs. Marlowe?" "Someone sent me a link to something called emmaandmaxandjessica.com. It has all these terrible accusations about Emma cheating on you and planning to divorce you and steal your money." "That sounds awful," I said. "Do you think it's true?" There was a long pause. I don't know what to think. Some of those emails look like they're really from Emma, but I can't believe she would do something like this. Maybe you should ask her about it." I tried calling her, but she's not answering her phone. Emma wasn't answering anyone's phone. According to Brian, who was monitoring social media, she'd gone completely dark online. Her Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter accounts had all been deactivated. Max's gym had posted a sign saying it was temporarily closed for renovations. Jessica's business website now displayed a message saying the company was restructuring. But the damage was spreading faster than they could contain it. The website had been shared hundreds of times on social media. Local Facebook groups were buzzing with discussions about that cheating wife and her trainer. Someone had posted screenshots of the most damaging emails to a popular local gossip forum. Emma's carefully cultivated social network was turning on her. Friends who had been at the party 2 weeks ago were now posting comments about how they'd always suspected something was off about Emma and Max. People were sharing their own stories about Max's inappropriate behavior, Jessica's unethical business practices, Emma's complaints about her marriage. By Wednesday, the story had been picked up by a local blogger who specialized in suburban drama. The blog post, titled, "The Cheating Wife, the Predatory Trainer, and the Social Media Scammer, a Modern Suburban Scandal," went viral in our community. That's when Emma finally called me. "Luke, we need to talk, now." "Of course," I said. "Is everything okay? You sound upset." "You know exactly what's wrong. That website, those lies about me and Max and Jessica." "What website?" "Don't play dumb with me, Luke. I know you're behind this." "Behind what?" "Emma, I honestly have no idea what you're talking about. I've been at work all day." "Someone created a website full of lies about me. They posted private emails and text messages and financial information. It's all over social media." "That sounds terrible. Have you called the police?" "The police can't do anything because technically it's not illegal. Whoever did this was very careful to only post information they had legal access to." "Well, that's something, I guess. At least you don't have to worry about identity theft or anything like that." "Luke." Emma's voice was dangerously quiet. "I know this was you. Emma, I don't know how to create websites, you know that. I can barely figure out how to update my LinkedIn profile." It wasn't technically a lie. I couldn't create websites, but Brian could, and Brian was very, very good at it. "Then you hired someone." "Why would I do that? If I wanted to know about your private emails and text messages, I could just ask you about them. We're married. We're supposed to share things with each other." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Emma, are you still there?" "I want a divorce," she said finally. "A divorce? But we were going to try the separation first, remember? See how we felt after a few months?" "I can't do this anymore, Luke. I can't be married to someone who would destroy my life like this." "I haven't destroyed anything, Emma. If your life is being destroyed, maybe you should think about why." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means that if someone posted your private emails and text messages, and those emails and messages are making you look bad, maybe the problem isn't the person who posted them. Maybe the problem is what you wrote in the first place." Another long silence. "I'll have my lawyer contact you," Emma said finally. "Okay. But Emma, before you do that, maybe you should think about what a divorce is going to look like now. Because if this website is already public, it's going to be pretty hard to claim that I was the problem in our marriage." I hung up before she could respond. That evening, Brian came over with Chinese takeout and a bottle of champagne. "How are you feeling?" he asked as we settled into the living room. "Honestly, I feel terrible, and relieved, and angry, and sad." I opened the champagne. "Mostly, I feel like I don't know who I was married to for 4 years." "The person you were married to was real," Brian said. "She just wasn't the only person living in Emma's head. The woman who laughed at your jokes and supported your dreams and made you feel loved, that was real. But so was the woman who planned to destroy you for money and social status. How is that possible? People are complicated, man. Emma probably told herself she was doing what she had to do, that you'd be better off without her, that she deserved to be happy. People can justify almost anything if they try hard enough." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, eating Chinese food and drinking champagne. It felt like a celebration, but also like a funeral. "So what happens now?" Brian asked. "Now I get divorced, I guess. Emma will probably try to claim I was abusive or controlling, but with that website out there, it's going to be hard for her to play the victim." "What about Max and Jessica?" I smiled. "What about them? Max's gym is finished. Nobody's going to trust a trainer who preys on married women. Jessica's business is destroyed, and their plan to open a wellness studio together? Kind of hard to do that when nobody in town trusts any of them." You know they're going to try to come after you, right? They're going to claim harassment, defamation, invasion of privacy. Let them try. Everything on that website is true and legally obtained. The worst thing they can accuse me of is being thorough. Brian raised his glass. To being thorough. To being underestimated, I corrected. We clinked glasses and drank to the end of my marriage and the beginning of whatever came next. 3 days later, Emma's lawyer contacted me about the divorce. The lawyer was clearly expecting to negotiate from a position of strength, but the conversation didn't go the way he'd planned. My client is prepared to be reasonable about the division of assets, he began, provided we can reach an amicable agreement without further complications. What kind of complications? Well, there's been some unfortunate publicity recently. Rumors and allegations that have been very damaging to my client's reputation. She's hoping that as part of the divorce settlement, you might be willing to make a public statement clarifying that these allegations are false. I laughed. You want me to lie about the evidence of your client's affair and fraud in exchange for a favorable divorce settlement? I wouldn't characterize it as lying. Then how would you characterize it? There was a pause. Perhaps we should discuss the specific terms of the asset division. I think that's a great idea. Here are my terms. I keep the house, my car, my retirement accounts, and my personal belongings. Emma keeps her car, her personal belongings, and whatever money she's managed to save in her secret bank account. We split any remaining joint debts. No alimony, no ongoing financial obligations. That's not going to work for my client. Then I guess we'll see each other in court. And just so you know, I'll be bringing copies of everything from that website as evidence. All of it. The affair, the business plan, the scheme to frame me as an unstable husband, the hidden assets, the fake social media campaigns. All of it. The lawyer hung up. 2 weeks later, Emma agreed to my terms. The divorce was finalized on a rainy Thursday morning in November. Emma didn't attend the hearing. Her lawyer handled everything. I sat in the courtroom and listened to the judge officially dissolve my 4-year marriage in less than 10 minutes. When it was over, I walked out of the courthouse and found Emma waiting by my car. She looked smaller than I remembered, diminished somehow. Her hair was different, shorter, less styled. She was wearing jeans and a sweater instead of her usual carefully coordinated outfits. Hi, Luke. Hi, Emma. I wanted to apologize, she said. For everything, for the party, for the cheating, for the lying, for all of it. I studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation or performance, but she just looked tired and sad and genuinely sorry. Okay, I said. I know it doesn't change anything. I know sorry doesn't fix what I did, but I wanted you to know that I never meant for it to go this far. What did you mean for it to do? I don't know. I thought I could have it both ways, I guess. Keep you as my safety net while I figured out what I really wanted. It was selfish and cruel and stupid. Yes, it was. Max and Jessica, they made it seem like it was the smart thing to do, like I deserved better and you were holding me back. But the truth is, you were the best thing in my life, and I threw it away because I was bored and selfish and I thought I could get away with it. Emma, I'm not asking for forgiveness, she said quickly. I'm not asking for another chance. I know it's too late for that. I just wanted you to know that I know what I lost. I looked at this woman who had been my wife, who had planned to destroy me, who was now standing in the rain apologizing for ruining both our lives. I hope you figure out what you really want, I said finally. And I hope when you do, you don't have to hurt anyone else to get it. Emma nodded, tears mixing with raindrops on her face. I hope so too. She walked away, and I got in my car and drove home to my empty house. That night, Brian came over with pizza and beer, and we sat in my living room talking about what came next. Any regrets? He asked. I thought about it. I regret that it had to end this way. I regret that Emma felt like she had to lie and cheat instead of just talking to me. I regret that I was so oblivious for so long. But do you regret fighting back? No, I said, and I meant it. I regret that I had to, but I don't regret doing it. Emma and Max and Jessica thought they could destroy me because I was too nice, too predictable, too boring to fight back effectively. They were wrong. What about the website? Any second thoughts about going nuclear? I considered this. The website was still up, still the first result when anyone searched for Emma's name. It would probably follow her for years, making it difficult for her to rebuild her reputation or start over somewhere new. No, I said finally. They made their choices. They planned to ruin my life for money and social status. The only difference is that I was better at it than they were. Brian raised his beer. To being better at it. To being underestimated, I said, and we drank to the end of one chapter of my life and the beginning of whatever came next. 6 months later, I heard through the suburban gossip network that Emma had moved to Portland. Max had closed his gym permanently and was working at a chain fitness center in a different state. Jessica had given up on social media management and was apparently working as a barista somewhere. I was still living in the house, still working at the same company, still driving my paid-off Honda Civic. From the outside, my life probably looked exactly the same as it had before Emma decided to destroy our marriage. But I felt different, stronger maybe, more aware of who I was and what I was capable of when pushed. I'd learned that being underestimated could be an advantage, that being predictable didn't mean being powerless, and that sometimes the boring, harmless husband turns out to be the most dangerous opponent of all. Emma had been right about one thing. I really was well trained. I sat when I was supposed to sit, stayed when I was supposed to stay, and came when called. But she'd forgotten that even the most well-trained dog will bite if you corner it. And when I bit back, I made sure it counted.